What is happening, everybody? James Hancock here. I'm back to review episode 5 of season 6 of The Expanse, an episode called Why We Fight. Now, that name comes from a series of documentary films produced during World War II, where none other than Frank Capra, the guy who did It's a Wonderful Life, was in the director's chair. And if you want to learn more about all the directors who served during World War II, check out the series 5 Came Back on Netflix. But this episode could have just as easily been called The Calm Before the Storm, as we saw all the various forces in this war getting in position for a massive confrontation in next week's finale. But before I get to my official review, I have to apologize to writer Dan Nowak, whose name I've been mispronouncing for basically all 6 seasons of this show. He was interviewed by Wes Chatham and Ty Frank in last week's episode of The Expanse After Show, and I quickly learned how I've been fumbling his name all this time. At any rate, check out the interview. He shared some fascinating insights about working with a much smaller writer's room on a much tighter schedule, and he offered one really cool, humble pearl of wisdom when he told Wes Chatham, "The audience doesn't care what I write, they care what you say." But this latest episode was written by the creators of this world, Daniel Abraham and Ty Frank, which is always a good sign. In a world where we see so many writers making a habit of butchering great material written by others, surprise, surprise, things turn out great when you simply hire the writers that cooked up a certain concept in the first place. And as always, the episode opens with a brief scene in Laconia, where the show started drifting into some legit horror terrain when Kara leaves her dead brother Zan in the forest, hoping that the strange dogs will fix him the same way they did with the bird. And my favorite bit is when Kara finds the 3 dogs sitting almost in kind of formation waiting for her, and the way they look like they've been kind of expecting her just gave me the heebie-jeebies. But like the bird before him, Zan is back, but he's different. His eyes have changed and his senses have expanded. Now what the consequences will be for this little experiment in bringing dead kids back to life, you'll have to wait and see next week. Or just go ahead and read Strange Dogs, which is short and sweet and well worth reading. And then the episode really got underway with a massive bang as we see what happens to the MCRN forces. They decided to go ahead and just bum rush Medina Station, and they basically got completely wiped out in a matter of moments, and shortly thereafter, we get the full explanation of Marco's secret weapon at the ring gates. Using a metal that the MCRN has never seen before, Marco has attached this giant railgun to the surface of the original control station, and because that station is immovable and not really subjected to the forces of inertia, the gun is even more powerful than usual. And if Marco ends up getting his free navy behind that awesome firepower, he'll basically be untouchable with this endless supply of resources being brought to him by all the colonies through all the various ring gates. And to make matters even worse, the Inners can't counterattack with nukes, in that the alien station has the potential to completely destroy their entire solar system, as we saw way back in season 3. As my dearly departed stepdad used to say, they're in a pickle. Avasarala is even more brutally honest when talking to Bobby about whether or not she's gone too soft. In her words, she says, there is no prize for best victim. But this episode gave us all kinds of interesting developments, almost like they're very deliberately wrapping up all the less major plot threads ahead of the season finale, like Avasarala receiving the message from Prax about the new solution based on protomolecule research, which will immediately alleviate Earth's food crisis. And speaking of the protomolecule, the Rocinante gets some brand new armor based on protomolecule research. On one hand, that's awesome, obviously. On the other, Peaches worries that in the long run, these types of innovations are going to make it look like her father's mad ambitions were right all along. Meanwhile, Naomi gets to the bottom of the situation with the ring gates when she determines the mass energy threshold that triggers the disappearances. Whatever entities might be living just beyond the rings, Holden can feel them getting properly pissed off whenever the gates are used. And for now, I can't say more on that front, but if you want to learn more about these strange entities, read books 7 and 9 of The Expanse. You will not regret it. But while all the Inners are scrambling to get organized before Marco can get behind his new railgun, we see that most members of the Free Navy are enjoying some serious celebrations throughout the episode. That is, at least except for Tadeo, who gets locked in the brig for trying to find out whether or not his brother was killed on Ceres. Philip does a little digging on his behalf and learns that the brother did in fact die, and to make matters even worse, Tadeo acknowledges that he was part of the crew that rigged the docks to explode in the first place. And as a result, young Philip is learning some brutal hard life lessons about the reality of war, no matter what your intentions might be. But the episode wasn't devoted exclusively to war and heartache and brutality. They provided a little levity as we see Amos on the prowl, totally drunk, jacked as hell, and covered in lipstick and scratches and glitter after enjoying the friendly company of some of the professionals on Ceres. And he shares this interesting dramatic beat with Bobby, where he admits he might not be going back to the Rocinante due to Holden's decision to disarm the missile that would have killed Marco. Bobby's attitude towards war is a little more straightforward, where she says, in the end, it all boils down to protecting whoever is on your flank. And that's clearly what Amos needed to hear, because he decides to go back to the Rocinante, but he wants to hit one more brothel before going back to the ship. And then we get this great beat where he invites Bobby to come along. And she's like, do you want me to come with you or come with you? And Amos, who's obviously open-minded, says, whatever. Anyway, the scene was fantastic. And it opens up the imagination to all these interesting possibilities. And that is a scene that I would have definitely liked to have seen in an alternate universe. But in that the show chose not to provide that scene, we'll just have to use our imaginations. But the biggest dramatic payoffs to this episode were all involving the character of Kamina Drummer, who I think is a strong contender for having the coolest storyline of any character all season. She and her new fleet come to the rescue of Ceres, bringing food and fuel, solving the immediate humanitarian crisis, but it all very nearly goes tits up due to some overzealous guards. But Avasarala, who's always playing a long game, she steps in, tries to play nice, because she knows she's going to end up asking something from Drummer that would ordinarily be considered inconceivable. But before their big showdown, we get this really gnarly scene where Joseph learns that the new arm that's growing in this little vat attached to his arm is never going to function properly. And even worse, it needs to be hacked off immediately, and all those new little nerve endings need to be scraped out. And I don't know why, I just eat this stuff up and I love all these little grisly details. In the end, Michio decides to stay with him as he recovers while he waits for his brand new prosthetic arm. But the main dramatic hook of this episode is whether or not Drummer can be persuaded to add her 8 ships to the upcoming raid on Medina Station. Naomi is the first person recruited for the task, but Drummer is fiercely distrustful of Enters for a variety of reasons and doesn't want to be on their leash. And while she might not like Marco, she totally understands why 100 years of oppression resulted in someone like Marco in the first place. And she also remembers Avasarala as the person who once hung a Belter on hooks and let them suffocate. Avasarala might not be that person anymore, but still, Belters have very long memories. But in the end, they meet in this iconic scene where Drummer agrees to fight against her own kind, as long as she and her ships don't have to take orders from the Enters. And the way the scene was shot and the way it was staged, it was just so satisfying to watch, and it perfectly tees up all the insanity coming next week. So as sad as it might be seeing this show slowly wrapping up, I've been thoroughly enjoying the ride, rewatching the latest episodes each week, and I can't wait to do it one more time next week. But for now, thanks so much for listening to my review. Please remember to like, subscribe, hit the bell. Hope everyone's having a blast with the show, but more importantly, as always, onwards and upwards.